In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down my must-draft players by round, going through my Underdog fantasy exposures, breaking down my most drafted players from rounds 1 to 6, and highlighting my most drafted player in each round to give you guys some targets while you guys are out there either practicing for your home leagues or doing some Underdog drafts over there on Underdog Fantasy. So, like the video if you guys enjoy, subscribe if this is the first time you're checking us out. A lot of new listeners this time of year. Really appreciate you guys for all of the support. Now let's get into it. Okay, so quick announcement before we get into the video. Our Redraft Rankings Manifesto is back and better than ever as the Redraft Rankings Manifesto 2.0 is officially live. Everything you need to be ready for your 2023 drafts for your home league, everything you need to be ready to do Underdog drafts, positional rankings and tiers, last year's finishes, Danny's The Truth Series game logs for the top players, our rankings versus sharp ADP sites like Underdog, our rankings versus more home league ADP sites like Fantasy Pros Expert Consensus rankings. And you can get access to the Redraft Rankings Manifesto 2.0 by signing up and depositing just $10 on Underdog Fantasy. That will cover you also for weekly rankings in season. So it's basically a complete package deal. You get our weekly rankings, our redraft rankings, and a bonus on Underdog just for $10 signing up over there using code FSE. And if you already have an Underdog account or if you can't play Underdog in the state that you're in, the manifesto will also be live on our site, flockfantasy.com. And then, of course, use code FSE over there for 30% off. If you sign up annually there, you get a free 6 months and also a free Zoom consultation to talk Dynasty, talk Redraft. I'll hop on there and do a best ball draft with you if you want. Doesn't really matter. You get a free Zoom consultation for signing up over there on Flock Fantasy using code FSE as well. So round one, we're going to start it off. We're going to get into the players that I have. With each round, I'm going to highlight my highest owned players, and then I'm going to break down the guy that is the highest owned of the players that I talk about. So I've done about 72 or 73 entries in BBM4 right now. I intend to max it 150 of them. I backloaded a lot of my entries for August when we know the most amount of information. So probably mid-August, I'll be going to Buffalo to do a bunch of drafts again. But my most drafted player in round one is Ceedee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. You guys can see the ADP of all the players on the screen right now. Bijan Robinson is right behind Ceedee Lamb as my most drafted player at 15%. As the summer goes on, he might pass him because I love Bijan this year. Garrett Wilson and Tyreek both at 11.5% as well. But Ceedee Lamb is on 17.6% of my teams, and I'm clicking on him for a number of reasons. The major of which is that he's just such a clean projection from a redraft standpoint, from a best ball standpoint. In tomorrow's league-winning wide receivers video, I promise you he's going to score very highly because Ceedee Lamb has literally everything you could ask for working in his favor. His team throws a ton, right? The Cowboys, top of the leagues in pass attempts every year. Even though Kellen Moore is no longer there, I still expect him to be among the league leaders in pass attempts. He is the clear number one of this team, even though Brandon Cooks is coming in and Michael Gallup is second year removed from the ACL surgery. That can help elevate the offense. In my opinion, that does not diminish Ceedee Lamb's dominance as the number one of this team. They don't take anything away from Lamb's outlook. If anything, they make it better because it results in more red zone opportunities, less stalled drives, and all that kind of stuff. Dak is a good quarterback, if not a great quarterback. So the fact that this offense has been top 5 in points per game in scoring anytime he's been healthy, and in 2021, they were first in points scored and first in yards totaled as well. And then when we're looking at Ceedee Lamb himself, he has very few blemishes coming off of his profile. He was a great prospect coming out of Oklahoma. He's gotten better every single year of his career, including a massive breakout season last year. He's entering a contract season in his 4th NFL year. He does have a 5th-year option, but he could get extended with a monster year this year. 29% target share as a 3rd-year wide receiver at 23 years old. Wide receiver 7 in points per game. He's just 24 years old still. Elite reception perception numbers. You guys can see them on the screen there. 82nd percentile versus man. 66th against zone. 85th against press. Even though he saw some double coverage, he was actually able to beat that as well. No injury concerns because he's a young player. Hasn't really suffered many injuries. And in Danny's The Truth series, he looked at the splits with Dak Prescott healthy last year, which obviously we'd be projecting to be the case going into 2023. Lamb was near 20 points per game in PPR scoring formats, pacing for a wide receiver 4 finish on the season, averaging nearly 9 targets per game. If he runs hot with touchdowns this year, which is definitely very possible now that the team cut their goal line back in Ezekiel Elliott and they added some wide receiver talent around Ceedee Lamb, he has the possibility to have a legendary season, a 23 point per game season. and he's available right now in the late first rounds, and I can't stop taking him. He is the poster child for a safe pick in the first round. If you guys are more risk averse and you don't like drafting, risky players early on in your draft because you buy into the theory that you can't win your draft early on, but you can lose it, I have him ranked at 6th overall right now. His ADP is 11. I think he is one of the safest picks in the first round for a number of reasons, most of which I already outlined. So round 2, here is the ADP. You guys can see it on the screen. I got T. Higgins at 13.2%. I have Jalen Waddle and Devontae Adams both over 10%. But my most drafted player is a guy that is very much in the news cycle right now in Saquon Barkley. And we're saying in the NFC East with this one at 17.6%. I get it. I understand why Saquon Barkley is sliding a little bit because there's the threat of a holdout, but realistically, he has no leverage because he's on the franchise tag. He has to play a minimum of 6 games next year. All that stuff is part of the equation in this whole, debate about around should, teams pay running backs. He'll probably hold out through training camp. I don't expect him to report probably until close to the season. And the preseason, he's probably going to skip the whole thing as well. But I do think he will be back for the regular season. There's been reports from Mike Florio and others that him and Josh Jacobs both understand that they don't really have any leverage and they don't intend to hold out into the season. The take that I don't agree with, that I think people are floating out there right now, is saying that, Barkley's going to report to training camp or he's going to report once the season starts, play some games, and then the second he has a nagging injury, he's just going to sit out. He's just going to sit out games. He's going to play 6 games, and then he's going to sit out the rest of the season. Guys, if that happens, his market will go down in free agency. He will not do that because if he sits out games, then NFL teams will use that as leverage not to pay him once again. So his only option, and it's unfortunate for the running back position, is to go out and ball yet again. That's pretty much his only thing that he can do to make sure he gets a big contract. Saquon will be a late first rounder the second he is ready to go. And the fact that you can get him in the mid to late second round right now, he's a stud talent who averaged 22 touches per game last year, despite entering the season basically with durability concerns because he was, injured the year prior. 5 targets per game when he's healthy, long runs, the ability to run hot on touchdowns because his team features him on the goal line. All are reasonable projections for a guy of this talent level with this workload. If this were 5 years ago, Saquon Barkley would be a top 5 pick in redraft leagues. He is still the same 20-plus PPR point per game ceiling projection that he was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. The Giants had a rookie right tackle last year. They had a first-year head coach. They had a quarterback who was in flux. 16th in scoring was the pace that they had last year in points per game. There's still meat on the bone for this Giants offense to get better. If Darren Waller's a good addition, if some of the receiver additions work out, Saquon Barkley is going to have a monster season, and you can get him at a massively discounted rate right now. So he is a guy that I'm absolutely targeting as a trade target in Dynasty leagues, as a best ball target, as a guy that I'm hoping to get in the second round of my redraft leagues. Everywhere I am targeting Saquon Barkley. Round 3 ADP, you guys can see it on the screen. I got Calvin Ridley at 14.7%. I have Deebo Samuel at 10.3%. But my highest drafted player in round 3 overall is Breece Hall, again at 17.6%, the same as CeeDee Lamb and Saquon Barkley's exposure. The reason is because Breece Hall has legendary upside. Simply put, he is a superstar talent that we were robbed of having a legendary season as a rookie. I seriously think we would have seen a monster season, even with Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and Mike White at quarterback last year. Breece Hall was about to smash. If Aaron Rodgers is the same Aaron Rodgers, even if he's only 80 to 90% of his 4-time MVP form, Breece Hall showcased his ability to earn targets at an elite rate. He had 4.6 targets per game as a rookie last year on only 37.4% of the team's routes, which is absolutely insane. Tackles avoided per attempt at over 50%, which led all running backs in the NFL last year. 11.3% breakaway run rate as well. Second amount among running backs. He has 4.3 speed. The elephant in the room, of course, is that he's coming off of an ACL tear, and he's entering the season with some injury concerns, but I'm going to repeat the sentiments that any fantasy doctor you can ask will tell you. ACL tears are not binary. They're not as simple as saying never draft a running back, 1 year removed from an ACL tear, because we've seen Jamal Charles and Adrian Peterson and some of these guys do well 1 year removed from an ACL tear, in some cases 7 or 8 months removed from an ACL tear. But it's all dependent on factors like age, severity of their surgery, athleticism, draft capital, recovery timeline, all that kind of stuff, which, by the way, is all off the charts for Breece Hall because he's 22 years old. It's a routine ACL tear. He didn't have a lot of damage outside of the ACL. Elite athleticism profile, great draft capital. The fact that he suffered it in basically October also it bodes well for him because he has a full 9 to 12 months to get back on the field. The one thing I will say is if we continue to miss checkpoints on Breece Hall, I will cool cool down my exposure. He did start training camp on the PUP list, which means that he's physically unable to perform, which was checkpoint 1 that actually Javonte Williams hit coming off of the same injury, and Breece Hall did not. Ideally, by the time you guys have your home league drafts, Breece is out there playing in preseason games, even if it's a little bit, scheduled to start in week 1. He's practicing. There's really no concerns from an injury perspective. This guy has the ability to break fantasy football. It's the reason I've been drafting him a ton. He has the ability to give you an elite running back season for round 3 prices right now. And the fact that you're getting him in round 3 instead of round 1 means that he can have a legendary 20-plus best ball win rate type of season, even if he only cracks 18, 19, 20 points per game. He doesn't have to have 25 points per game like a first-round pick would have to have with that kind of win rate. So it's very enticing right now. It's too enticing not to take the risk on Breece Hall. Again, monitor the injury reports, monitor his progress. If it starts to cool down and it seems like he's not going to be ready for week 1, then I will cool down my exposure. But as of right now, I am still drafting a ton of Breece Hall. So now we move on to round 4 of ADP, and this is the round 4 ADP, as you guys can see on the screen. Jerry Jeudy is up there at 17.6% for me. Joe Burrow and Mike Williams are both at 12% for me, but my highest rostered player, and my highest rostered player so far of this video, is Travis Etienne at 20.6% in the 4th round. He's such a polarizing player. I understand some people are not going to like this take. Some people are not going to like Travis Etienne. There's so much going in his favor, though, so I'll break that down first. I believe the Jaguars will be the breakout offense of 2023. This year's Eagles, this year's whatever. I love Calvin Ridley. I love Trevor Lawrence. I love Christian Kirk. I think Evan Ingram and Zay Jones are great role players, and I like all of them, to be honest, at cost in fantasy. Being a part of an elite offense, or at least a very good offense, is crucial for running backs. It can really elevate you from a mid RB2, which is basically what Travis Etienne was last year, to a back-end RB1, mid RB1, or even a high-end RB1. But let me address the elephant in the room, because Tank Bigsby was drafted in the 3rd round. This coaching staff, this regime did not take Travis Etienne in the 1st round, but Etienne was a 1st-round pick. Ergo, he's much more talented than Tank Bigsby. I loved Tank Bigsby coming out, but I absolutely loved Travis Etienne coming out. Tank Bigsby is a rookie, which means he probably won't be given a huge role or huge workload right away. Etienne ranked 7th in the NFL last year and inside the 5 carries, which was basically his rookie season last year because he missed his entire rookie season in 2021. He averaged over 5 yards per carry. He only scored 5 touchdowns despite that great usage, so some positive regression coming there. As a guy who had an 87th percentile target share coming out of college, he has more meat left on the bone to get more targets as well. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily a lock that happens, but 45 targets that he had last year, I think one thing that we have to remember about Travis Etienne is that it took him a few years to get his receiving chops at Clemson as well. So maybe it's happening in the NFL too. Maybe his brain just kind of needs to slow down so that he can, play faster and stop thinking so much. And that might be why the coaching staff has not put more of a receiving workload on his plate. And if he shows that in camp, if he shows that he's ready to be the guy, then they definitely could amp that up going into the regular season. Etienne is definitely a polarizing player. Don't get me wrong. He definitely has downside risk. It's possible that this is a full-blown running back by committee, but getting a guy with a 60 to 70% opportunity share ceiling and potentially a top 5 to 10 offense who has the ability to break off long touchdowns, has the, receiving profile to have a 80 target season, it's absolutely worth the risk in round 4. Again, you're not taking this guy in round 1 or 2 like he'd probably be going if this were a couple years ago. He is going in round 4 of Underdog ADP, probably late round 3 of most of your guys' home leagues as well. So definitely be on the lookout for Travis Etienne. If he starts to slide, I'm absolutely snapping up shares wherever I can get them, and especially in best ball formats where even if he does split a backfield a little bit with Tank Bigsby, he is going to be extremely valuable. Again, with these rookie running backs, usually they're coming into situations where there's like a dusty-ass veteran ahead of them on the depth chart, and with Kenneth Walker and Travis Etienne, those guys are not dusty-ass veterans. They're still young ascending players that are probably going to put those rookies on the back burner at least during their rookie season. So round 5 ADP, here it is. Ayuk was very close to being the guy that I talked about here at 20.6%. Second highest rostered player of anyone in the top 8 rounds for me. But the other guy that was in this round, Chris Godwin, 22.1%, my highest rostered player of anybody going in the top 8 rounds or earlier. I also had Hollywood and Deontay Johnson over 10%. Chris Godwin, I think, has one of the coolest cases to a high-end ceiling that is hiding in plain sight for a lot of people. He's the healthiest he's been in years, right? Because we saw, last year he was coming off of the ACL tear. Again, 8 months removed from an ACL tear. He played in week 1. I was at that game. in Dallas, and he just simply did not look himself, and he kind of didn't look like himself the entire season. But when he's been healthy, he's been absolutely on a tear. He's been absolutely dominant. He had his breakout season in 2019 when he posted 19.6 PPR points per game, finishes the wide receiver 2 overall, only behind Michael Thomas's legendary season. Since then, in the Tom Brady era, he dealt with hamstring injuries in 2020, which, by the way, he still finishes wide receiver 15 in points per game. In 2021, he was healthy for the most part until he tore his knee up in December, tore his ACL in December, and he finished wide receiver 7 at 17.3 points per game. And then in 2022, coming 8 months removed from an ACL tear, he still finished wide receiver 15 in points per game at 14.9. So he posted also a career high in targets last year with 142. I realize that Tom Brady is gone, but here are the facts. This guy has literally been a top 15 wide receiver for 4 straight years in points per game, and Tom Brady last year wasn't good. He was 18th in the NFL in raw quarterback rating. The Bucs scored the 25th most points in the NFL as an offense. It's not like this Bucs offense is going from the elite levels it was in 2020 and 2021 with Tom Brady. They're going from a bad offense to another bad offense. So while it may seem like Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield is a massive downgrade, but the offensive line will be better. All-pro right tackle Tristan Wirfs is moving to left tackle, which has been a problem with Donovan Smith for a while. Pro Bowl center Ryan Jensen didn't play at all last year, and he's coming back healthy. Some of the young guys around those guys at guard and right tackle with Luke Gadecki this year are more experienced. They have more stuff under their belt, and offensive line play is often the reason why a lot of offenses either break out or disappoint, and I think this Bucs offensive line could be a lot better this year. So, Baker Mayfield, yeah, it's concerning. Both wide receivers are definitely going to take a hit a little bit, but especially with Chris Godwin, he's an easy target. He's a guy that needs to be hit over the middle, the one that Baker Mayfield can hit over and over and over again, just pepper with targets. So to the pass volume point that I'm sure somebody's going to bring up as well, yeah, they're not going to pass as much as they did with Tom Brady. They literally have the NFL record for pass attempts per game in 2020 and 2021 with Tom Brady, but they will absolutely still be a top 10 offense in pass attempts. So Chris Godwin has the ability to have 135, 140, 150 targets this year, finish yet again as a top 15 wide receiver in points per game. And right now he is going as wide receiver 30 in ADP, available in the 5th round, when last year, coming off of a torn ACL, he was literally double his ADP, wide receiver 15. I think the guy is an absolute lock for wide receiver 2 production or better with his target earning ability, his red zone ability, his ability to score touchdowns, create big plays. He hasn't really been a big play threat in a couple of years because he's been dealing with injuries, but if he's healthy this year, he can absolutely be a wide receiver 1, even with Baker Mayfield as the quarterback. So moving on to the last round of ADP that we're going to break down, round 6 of ADP is on the screen right now. My highest owned players in this round include my 3rd highest owned quarterback and Trevor Lawrence at 13.2%. My highest owned wide receiver, not named Chris Godwin from the Buccaneers, which is Mike Evans at 12%, and then Dameon Pierce I also have at about 12% as well. But my highest rostered player in this round 6 of ADP is Jahan Dotson at 19.1%, my 4th highest owned player overall that is going in the top 8 rounds of ADP. Second-year breakout wide receivers are almost always good bets for big-time breakout seasons, big win rate type of seasons in best ball. You guys probably know that I'm bullish on Sam Howell. I'm bullish on Jacoby Brissett as a great backup, especially now that Eric Bieniemy comes in to architect this offense. He comes in from Kansas City to rescue this Washington Commanders offense from the bottom 2 offense that they were in pace of play. Only the Tennessee Titans were a slower-paced offense than the Washington Commanders last year. Jahan Dotson can straight up play. If you don't believe me, go watch some film on him. He scored nearly 14 points per game in the 9 healthy games that he played as a rookie, where he was running at least like 70% of the team's routes. And again, he was also the first rookie to be named a starter for his team way back in training camp. The first preseason game came along with Jahan Dotson, and he was already running as many routes as Terry McLaurin. So that should kind of prove just how talented this kid is. 14 points per game is basically what Christian Kirk and what Chris Olave put up last year. So we're talking like legitimate wide receiver 2 production, even though Terry McLaurin was playing, even though Terry McLaurin was producing himself. Year 2, in my opinion, for Jahan Dotson can be an explosion. In this offense, assuming the quarterback play is better than most people think, which I think it will be because I don't think Sam Howell's a bad quarterback. I think he has a lot of upside. And at the very least, even if Sam Howell stinks, which I don't think he does, Jacoby Brissett was basically a top 15 quarterback by every measure in 2022. So this offense, I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. I think it's going to be better than people think. And as a result of that, I've drafted a lot of Jahan Dotson in round 6. So if you enjoyed this video, like I said, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you want access to our Redraft Rankings Manifesto 2.0, which has all of our positional rankings, all of our tiers, all of our, comparisons and points per game from last year, all of our comparisons for us, me and Danny consensus versus Underdog ADP versus expert consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros, all of that is available in the Redraft Rankings Manifesto 2.0, and you can get it one of two ways, either by signing up and depositing $10 on Underdog Fantasy using code FSE, or you can get it on our site, flockfantasy.com/FSE for 30% off. An annual subscription will also get you 6 months for free and a free Zoom consultation with myself or with Danny. Also, be sure to check out all of our other sponsors down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.